gosh, I don't even know if I could talk about it here. We went into this hoarder house. It was a small little two-bedroom house. And like he was a legitimate hoarder. There was a pathway, maybe this wide, that sort of went through the house, and he had books. And I remember he had these old whiskey bottles, like half gallon with candles in them. This guy was like a hoarder, stalker, Polaroids of people. It was the ickiest thing ever. I'll never
Oh
forget.
my.
Just like we brought in labor ready people to kind of all clean it out. So that one I'll never forget that day. But then there's great days too.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our channel. I'm RE Page, and I'm so glad you're here with us today. We've got a really great discussion lined up for you. Joining me today is the go-to expert for turning real estate chaos into streamlined success. He's the founder of Easy REI Closings, the premier genius of all things REI systems, and a brilliant deal scaling machine. Please welcome to the show, David Olds.
All right. Thank you so much. Such a kind introduction. Thank you. Super excited to be here. I think we're going to have a lot of fun today.
David, it's so good to have you on the podcast today. I'm excited. I know we're going to get a lot of great info out there for our viewers, and Fund&Grow is excited to have you on here today. So let's start at the beginning. And I
Yeah.
was curious, how did you accidentally buying a foreclosure
Yeah.
become the launch pad for your entire real estate investing career? You don't hear that
Mm,
often.
Man, I'll tell you, it was a long and windy road. Yeah, actually, my wife and I, we bought our first property. We had just gotten married and found a realtor and did things the normal way, right? Like that everybody just expects who's not in real estate as a profession, how we got started. We found this house, we bought it, and as I came out of the closing, I said to my agent, "Hey, like where was the other person? I like that was weird. I just thought there were going to be like two people sitting on opposite sides of the desk and it would be a whole thing." And she's like, "No, dummy, that was a foreclosure." I'm like, "Oh, is that why it said Wells Fargo as the seller?" And this was in 2002, right? So like nobody knew, like foreclosures wasn't really a thing. But turns out it was, and there were some out there. So that was our first one. And, bought that property and moved in. And because I had grown up and my dad was always like having me help fix up the house and do all those things, which I absolutely hated at the time, like every kid, nobody wants to do those types of things. So we moved in and I kind of started doing the same thing. At the time, I was working for a hardware store in Florida called Scotty's Hardware. So I'm like, okay, well, this is what I grew up doing. This is what I do now. Let me fix the cabinets. Let me put laminate floors in. Let me replace a sliding glass door with a French door. Let's do all these things. And then, 2 years later, I needed to move a little closer to my new job. And we sold the house, same realtor, going into the title company again. And she says, "Hey, you don't have to pay taxes on this because you owned it for 2 years." And I'm like, "What?" And she says, "Yeah, dummy, you owned it for 2 years. It's homesteaded. It's tax-free money." I'm like, "Oh my God, that's amazing." Same realtor. So then we bought another house. It was an ugly house in a beautiful neighborhood. We fixed that one up, and over the course of that 2 years, then we sold that one and made almost 100,000, where we'd made like 48 on the first one. So that was sort of what spurred this. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is like a really great side hustle where, me and my wife have full-time jobs and we're working, and, fixing up these houses was, where we got started, just doing it nights and weekends." So from there, just got involved and found a local real estate group. And because this is, the mid 2000s, that's before YouTube and Google and Instagram and Snapadoodle and all the things. So the way that you learned was by showing up at a REIA group. And yeah, that's kind of how it started. Just started going to a bunch of classes and weekend boot camps and all of that type of stuff.
So I imagine that the profit you made off that, the unexpected profit, what was that? It
Yeah.
was around 50,000 or something, if I remember
Yeah,
right.
I mean, we knew we were going to make money, but it was the tax-free portion was really
Oh, that's
amazing.
the beautiful part.
Yeah, yeah, that was really cool. And then I'm like, well, we should do that again, and then we should do it again. So I guess now they have a fancy term for it, calling it house hacking. But back then it was just, we thought we'd discovered lightning or fire in a bottle or whatever. It was pretty cool.
So going back many years, back to
Hmm.
the 2008 crash,
Hmm.
you had moved to Chattanooga. Was
Yeah,
that
yeah.
because of the crash? Because did you change where you were investing?
Yeah, yeah. I know you're in Florida, right? Like how long have you been
Yeah.
there in Florida?
I've been in Florida now for 18 years.
Oh, okay. So you were
Yeah.
there in '09, right? That
Yeah.
math? Okay. Well, it was the end of the world. I worked for a
Yeah.
building supply company, ProBuild, 84 Lumber. And when the crash happened in Florida, literally just like everything came to a halt, right? Tourism stopped, construction stopped. Well, being in that industry, both of us, I was a outside salesperson. My wife was a project manager, like purchasing manager for a custom home builder. Like things got really, really bad. And even before that, I was starting to think, geez, I want to buy some rental properties. So where can I buy some properties that are more affordable than Central Florida? Because prices were growing pretty quick there, right? And
And
five,
they've
six,
shot
seven,
up.
eight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of that was the thinking even before the crash started to happen. So we were looking at other markets like, Louisville, Chattanooga, Birmingham, Huntsville. Like I was looking at other markets that were within a drive. And then, the crash happened. My wife lost her job. Mine, like commissions in a sales job for building materials, literally almost stopped. So we decided on Chattanooga. We picked Chattanooga for a couple of reasons. It had been a very stable market. So in Florida, as you know, like the economy is like a three-legged stool, right? There's agriculture and like livestock. It's one of the biggest livestock states out there, right? But then the rest is construction, right? And so many of the jobs in Florida are based around construction, whether it's actual, the person doing construction or the building materials. And then the other part is tourism. So when the crash happened, right, people stopped traveling. That was the end of tourism. And then construction came to a halt. So the whole state kind of fell on its face. So what I was looking for when I was looking at other markets, I was looking for something that was stable, that had a broad, diverse kind of income stream. And that's one of the reasons we settled on Chattanooga. It's actually a technology hub. Most people don't realize it. It was the first city in the United States to have gigabyte internet access to every house in the city. Volkswagen had just announced that they were building a brand new plant here, and they were going to add 10,000 jobs. So in a city or a county MSA that had 200,000 people, adding 10%, 10,000 jobs was 5%. That's a pretty big growth very quickly. And then also Amazon was putting in two fulfillment centers here close by. So it seemed like a really great market to move to. So yeah, we 100% picked this based off the numbers, off of real estate. Knew one realtor kind of a little bit when we moved here. Um, but yeah, we lost our jobs. We had a house in Florida that we couldn't even sell, so we had to lease option that. So when we came here, we had $500 or $5,000, I'm sorry, in our pocket and like no jobs, and we had to figure it out.
Wow. And look how well you've done since moving to
Well,
Chattanooga. Tennessee has been
yeah.
beautiful, huh?
Tennessee's been
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I had no choice. I had a wife, two boys, and three fat dogs. I was too dumb to quit. I had actually never wholesaled a deal. Everything that I did in Florida was a rehab deal. So once we got here, my brother was also here. Like we were all in. It was the thing that we did every single day. Woke up from the minute I put my feet on the floor. It was real estate. I was out driving for dollars, just all those old school methods that, you don't have to do now because technology and software is so advanced. Just out hitting the streets, knocking on doors, talking to people, networking, and, that hard work and just focus, right? Pure focus and determination really paid off. And we got our first deal within a few weeks. And then from there, just things really started to snowball pretty quick.
Yeah, I love that. Just sheer determination,
Yeah.
changing your circumstances,
Hmm.
creating something for yourself, not,
Yeah.
everyone else in Florida at that time in the same situation that you were in, and
Hmm.
they could have all picked themselves up by their bootstraps and done something too. And now
Yeah.
you're considered a leader in
Yeah.
wholesaling in your region. That's
Thank
just
you.
absolutely amazing.
Yeah, we grew the business. Again, when I came to Chattanooga, I wanted to buy rental properties. But, back then, you and I remember, but for the people who weren't active back then, like banks weren't lending money for apartment complexes. They were very busy taking properties back.
Yeah.
So, that wasn't an option. I couldn't fall back on what I was doing before, which was buying a house and remodeling it because nobody was buying houses, right? Remember the economy had collapsed. So the only thing left was wholesaling. So, I really looked at, because I'd been in that REIA, Central Florida Real Estate Investors Network for so long, I understood how to look at the market and pull some data, some basic numbers like, hey, I'm looking for wholesalers who are cash buyers. What zip codes, are the cash transactions happening in? Let me see if I can reverse engineer that. Okay, great. That's where I should be driving for dollars, putting out bandit signs and sending postcards. And that was kind of the foundation of where we started. And then over time, as the market picked up, then we got some private money. We learned how to get back into rehabs. We bought a lot of rental properties, over 100 rental properties with just owner financing. So Yeah, yeah, it's sort of like I said, just it was kind of one step at a time, just pushing through it every day. And then when you look back, it all looks amazing now, but at the time, it was a struggle for sure.
And for those unfamiliar, how would you
Mhm.
define wholesaling
Sure.
and what makes it such an attractive entry point into real estate?
Yeah.
Because obviously for you, you've just
Hmm.
showed everyone on the call that you can sell your house or lease option it. You can have
Hmm.
$5,000 to your name. You can
Yeah.
have your dogs and your family and literally pick up and move from one place to another and
Yeah.
become successful at this thing called wholesaling.
Yeah, it was a burning the boats moment. That house, that final house that I skipped over a little bit, that we lease optioned in Florida. That was kind of our final property where we were going to make 100,000 and we were going to leave. We were going to
Mhm.
leave Florida and go to Chattanooga funded, right? And from the time, literally the time we bought it to the time we tried to sell it was 6 months, and the value went from 214 down to like 130, and I bought it for 97. So that was the money that we were going to take and leave. I could not sell it because the market just kept dropping month over month over month. The only option was to lease option it to move to Chattanooga, where we had already started doing some marketing and we're going back and forth. So that $5,000 was literally all the money that we had to our name. I tell people we weren't even broke; we were half of broke, right? Like that was between $5,000 between me, my wife, the two boys, three fat dogs, and my brother. Um, so yeah. So anyways, wholesaling is a great entry point for people who want to get involved in real estate, because it doesn't take a lot of money, right? You can do everything in this business. You could do it's either time or money, right? If I have money, chances are I don't have a lot of time to dedicate, so I can throw that money at marketing or hiring people or doing that type of stuff. But if you don't have any money, chances are you have a lot of time on your hands. And that was the case for us. It was literally, we are going to figure this out. We're going to bootstrap this. We're going to do whatever it takes. And, I think the commonality between people that are successful is they definitely have that mentality of just being unstoppable, and I'm going to overcome all of the obstacles that are out there. But to answer your question, wholesaling is very simple. We go out, we find a seller who's probably in some type of distress. They want to sell very quickly, and they're willing to give up, some of their equity or come down on the price in order for a fast solution. The easiest people for me were ones who the house was in distress, meaning it needed a lot of repairs. They didn't want to put the money into repairing the property. So we were able to come in and offer them a solution, right? They don't have to lose sleep over this house anymore that, maybe tenants have destroyed, or the city's giving them a hard time about, or it has a tree on the roof, or whatever the case is. So we find that, we talk to those sellers, we negotiate a deal to buy the property. We literally put it on a piece of paper, cost 10 cents. And then now we have that contract, and we're going to go out and we're going to find a cash buyer who's willing to pay more for that property than we have it under contract. And where we get paid in wholesaling is off of that spread. So if I contracted it for 50,000, but I have somebody who will pay me 62,000 for it, fantastic. I take those contracts to a title company and I make the difference there, that $12,000.
I love it.
Hmm.
So, as you've been personally doing this, and
Yeah,
obviously you've shown how well it works for yourself, and everyone I'm sure is on the call somewhat heard of wholesaling to some
sure.
capacity. But what systems and strategies helped you scale your
Hmm.
wholesaling business?
Yeah.
Because everyone's heard of you at this point. So obviously you're
Thank you.
doing some big things. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's funny that like the signs behind me, we put up, these are actual signs from 10 years ago when we were doing this, putting out signs to generate leads. Yeah, scaling is it's important. If you want to grow beyond something like this, like wholesaling just being a little bit of a hobby. I figured out every way to do it wrong. So there weren't a lot of coaches, kind of back when we were starting it. Some of those systems for us was just, first off, I didn't ever want to give up any control of my company. I was like, I'm the smartest, I'm the best. Nobody can work as hard as me. Nobody will care as hard as me. And, that took me a couple of years to get over. I was just working myself to the bone. I would work a 14, 16-hour day, 6 days a week, and, you know, do 8 hours on Sunday because it was a half of a day. But eventually I finally realized that, oh, I can bring in other people who, can take some of this off my plate. And, that one part of the business where I can, have somebody else, I can train somebody else to do it. Well, now I can take my talents and the things that I like to do and focus on that part of the business to grow it. So where that, kind of what that looked like for us initially was I wanted help, talking to buyers. Right. So I brought in this girl. Her name was Taylor. She was just graduated from marketing from University of Tennessee and brought her in as kind of like an intern and taught her how to talk to buyers and how to make posts and how to write emails and, and sell properties. And that sort of took that off my plate and started to allow me to focus on some other things. And then we brought in a couple more people. And then, I brought in this other partner who helped with acquisitions. So, scaling for us was very just kind of one step at a time. The way that I explain to people, it's like you have this embryo, right? This is you. You're taking on all of the stuff, and then eventually, you pop this off, and you have a second person who can help you, and then you pour into that person until they're kind of maxed out, and then you add a second person. So that first person trains a second person, and so on.
And I've heard you say in terms of scaling in the past, you've said
Mhm.
simple is scalable.
It is, yeah. So where I came up with that is, as I started bringing in team members. Here was the exact moment where it started. I came out of my office one morning and I had three girls who work for me on the disposition side, which is the selling of these deals, right? So we would go out and we would find properties, put them under contract, and then now we were responsible. We had to sell those contracts to a new investor, a cash buyer who wanted to pay more. So I came out of the office and there's three of them. It's Taylor, Cassandra, and Rachel. And I said, okay, girls, tell me what's going on today. It was kind of our morning huddle. Like, hey, what's happening? And Taylor's like, oh, I'm doing this, and this. I'm like, okay, we haven't sold anything yet. Nope, no, okay, great. Talk to Cassandra. She's like, oh, I'm doing this, that, the other thing, and the fourth thing. Okay, cool. And then talk to Rachel, and she's got some things she's doing. I'm like, hold on, stop. You're all supposed to be doing 10 things, but you're doing six, and you're all doing a different six, right? And what I realized is we didn't have any kind of system in place, right? So where I'm going with that is if you're going to bring people in and you're going to have a business that has, just repeatable success, right? You do the same thing over and over and over again. You don't want to be recreating the wheel. So when I say simple is scalable, if I want to bring people in, I need to give them a system that literally I can bring somebody off the street and train them in a week. Like if it's more complicated than that, you're probably not going to get buy-in. They're not going to understand what you're doing. You want to just be able to put them in front of their computer and, give them a roadmap to success, right? Because if they don't get quick success, their long-term buy-in is not going to be there. And the greatest example of this is, Ari, have you ever seen that movie, The Founder, with Michael Keaton, where it's about McDonald's? It's Ray Kroc. Obviously, you can debate whether or not he was a good guy, but, he takes over McDonald's. And there's a scene where I think they're in a gymnasium and they literally tape out the floor plan of a McDonald's kitchen. And they go in there and they are, moving the fryer and all the things around so that it's the least number of steps, right? Think about McDonald's, a multi-billion dollar company that's run by 16-year-olds because they have a simple but scalable system, right? So that's what I try to think about when I'm bringing in people. I don't try to overcomplicate things. Like, as the founder or the CEO, we can all do a lot of calculations in our head, right? We're, okay, I'm talking to this lead and it's going to be an owner finance deal, but if that doesn't work, I'm going to pivot to subject to or novation or, we have all of these things in our head, but once you bring in somebody else into your business, like it's near impossible to transfer all of that on day one or week one or even year one. So I need to bring them in and give them a system that, oh, hey, I'm going to talk to the person. This is what I'm going to do. Then I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to do this. Right. So I try not to overcomplicate anything that we're doing for our people. In fact, Elon Musk does this all the time. Like he looks at his systems and says, okay, I want to cut out more than I add. I want to make this as simple as possible for our team.
So,
Exactly.
David, let's talk about easy REI closings. And
Yeah.
for you, what was the aha moment where you realized that the wholesaling process
Mhm.
in the industry was kind of broken? And you're like,
Yeah.
listen, this is what I need to fix. This is what we're
Mhm.
creating here.
Yeah, so great question, Ari. It came from, as we grew our wholesaling company and I brought in some partners and people came and people left, we expanded out. We were in almost 100 markets at one point, like all over the country. And subconsciously, I knew that there was a problem going into these markets. I'm like, okay, we're going to be in Buffalo, New York. Like, how am I going to close this deal? I don't have a title company up there. But, as we were bouncing in and out of markets all over the country, this was an obstacle. And every time we had a new deal, because we did over 1,647 deals, like it was always calling up a new title company and trying to figure out, can they do our deal? And title companies, every single one of them is like, yeah, just send your deal over. We got you. And we were finding over and over again, these deals would get to almost closing and the underwriter would kick it out because they didn't like something about the deal or they didn't like this. The second part of that is I started coaching people on the second part of our business, which is dispositions. And in that, it's teaching people how to sell their deal. One of the parts is getting it closed. And I realized that most of the coaches and the gurus and the influencers, it's very front end loaded, right? Oh, we're going to teach you how to do marketing. We're going to teach you how, talk to sellers and acquire the property, but very, very little education or training on the backside. The third part of that is we were doing a lot of deals with other investors, joint ventures where they would bring us a contract and we would sell it and handle the closing process because we had a full team on hand. And what I kept hearing over and over again from these people is, hey, we love working with you because you sell the deal quick. I'm like, thank you. Our team's really good. But also, you handle all the title stuff and we don't have to deal with the title company. So it's kind of those three things that sort of came together. And I sat with my partner, Heather, and I'm like, you know what? She was hired to be our transactions coordinator. She ran that part of our company. And I said, you know what? I think there's a need for this. I think this is a service that, we could create as sort of plug and play where we can just act as transaction coordinators, honestly, for our friends. It started out as just, some other guys like Nick Perry and Corey Geary and, other high volume wholesalers. And then when that worked out really good, then we expanded it out and opened it up for, to bring in clients, I guess almost 4 years ago.
So then those are pretty much the three main pain points that you
Hmm.
took to create
Yeah.
the easy REI closing systems.
Yeah, and we sort of fell backwards into it. It was like 5 years ago, I had no idea that we were going to become the largest transaction coordination company in the country or do 8,000 files or handle $500 million in closings. Like we had no idea. It was just solving a need and first saw that pain point in our own business. So we developed those processes. Okay, great. Hey, here's how we're going to handle contracts. And then when some other people came to us really in COVID, after some of my friends let a bunch of their team go, and then remember the market picked right back up, they came to us and said, hey, can you help? Can your coordinators help us with these files? Sure. And then are like, oh, well, this could be a real thing. Let's make this a business and see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what kind of infrastructure does it take to manage and operate this in all 50 states?
Man, I will tell you, you better have a good integrator because I'm a visionary. So I love talking about stuff and coming up with great ideas. If it wasn't for my partner, like she's the one who's the puppet master pulling all the strings. So infrastructure, a lot of training. When we hire a coordinator, we will train them for 2 to 3 months before we consider them certified. Because as they come in, like me, I'm the standard. So I'm like our clients. So for me, I want to make sure that they can handle all of the different types of transactions, right? Novation, subject to, installment method, novation, wrap mortgages, whatever it is. So we spend a lot of time training them. On the software side, we had to create something from scratch because there was nothing. There was nothing. There was no CRM or management system to handle this kind of deal flow with so many different files and in so many different kind of stages. So we created that. We had to create something for our clients where they could log in every single day and see with complete transparency what was going on with their file. Because as a wholesaler, I knew that was important, right? We all have trust issues. We want to make sure that if I'm going to hire, Easy REI Closings to handle this file, that they are actually doing something. And, one of the ways that on our side that we wanted to make sure we built our team was I wanted our coordinators to care as much about our clients' files as possible. So that's why a lot of their, pay and incentive packages based off of do these deals get closed, right? How quickly are they getting closed? So we're tracking that type of stuff all the time. And then, there's just the challenge of handling deals in simultaneously in all 50 states. So we have some coordinators who are really great in the attorney states, some who really, specialize in bankruptcy and foreclosure and all that type of stuff. So all of those things put together. And then I'm an old guy, so I like everybody in the office. I don't love the virtual model. I like having that kind of sense of community and culture, in-house. And one of the great things about our team is they can literally just turn around and talk to the coordinator behind them and go, hey, didn't you have that deal in Indiana last week that was like 10 hours from foreclosure? How did you stop that? Right. So now we have that sort of brain trust all in here, and you do not get that, if everybody's working off of Slack all over the country. It's just not something you can't bottle that.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
having the CRM kind of brings all that data together
it
into a place
does.
where you as the owner can easily see it. So
Hmm.
at Easy REI Closings, you've leveraged a lot of technology. You
Yeah.
talked about a client login. Did you create all of your own software or do you?
Yeah, we brought in developers to create it all. So that took us about 6 months to really get it built and test it in the beginning. And kind of during that initial phase, we were just working, like I said, for some of my close friends who ran big nationwide title companies. But again, I don't even log in. I don't even have a login for any of that. When I want to go in, I have to ask Heather, my partner. I'm like, hey, can I get the login to Stacker? She's like, what do you need it for? All you're gonna do is go in there and mess stuff up. When we talk about scaling, I think one of the most important things, and this was such a hard lesson for me to learn, and it's not just about transactions, right? It's about, finding someone to do your bookkeeping or your accounting or your property management. You have to give over some trust to, other people that they can, you know, help you run your business because we're not great at everything. Like I know there are things that I'm good at, but I'm definitely not great at everything.
Yeah. So speaking of that, are
Hmm.
there common mistakes that you
Yeah.
see other
Hmm.
investors or wholesalers making when it comes to handling these types of transactions? And what do you suggest?
Yeah, I think people rush through the process. 50% of all deals out there do not close. That's a nationwide statistic from First American Title Company, and that's backed up by all of the CRM, major CRM, operators. Some of the biggest mistakes are, you know, wholesalers, investors not asking good questions on the front side, like, "Hey, where did you get this property?" Or they hear something like, "Oh, I inherited it from my dad." Great, and then asking those follow-up questions. Which, if you're working with a transaction coordinator, that's fine. We have a very strict intake process. We have like a 65, question intake form where we will pull all of that out of your sellers. But so often I see people coming to us and, they don't really understand the transaction. They don't understand, hey, can I get this closed in 3 days or is it going to take 5 months? The other mistake that I see from wholesalers very frequently is, as investors, we go out and at the very beginning, remember I talked about, we're looking for people who are in some kind of pain or distress, right? So there are indicators, right? We can search for these things. The data's out there for, bankruptcy, foreclosure, probate, bad tenant, job transfer, absentee owner, all of those things. Well, that's great as an investor because the more of those problems that we can solve, right, the deeper the discount we can get on the property and the more we can make in the spread. However, when we want to close on that property, whether we're closing on it for ourselves or we're selling this deal to another buyer, we have to be able to deliver clear title, which means all of those problems, the death, divorce, the probate, the bad tenant, all of those things have to be cleared up. Right. That's what a great transaction coordinator does. They're sort of like the quarterback for your team. They're the project manager that takes all of those contracts with all the problems and then one at a time just strips them all away and gets a solution for the title company. So the title company can do their job, which they're there to, prepare the deed and the closing documents and then get this thing closed and funded.
So David, with all that in consideration, and I'm just
Yeah.
thinking about it, like
Hmm.
how does your team ensure compliance operating
Yeah.
across multiple markets and
Hmm.
jurisdictions, and you
Yeah.
have so many different, like basically different states and
Yeah.
counties,
Yeah.
laws.
3,100 counties, all, plus, I tell people there's 50 states that do it all different ways, right? You have attorney states, escrow states, title company states. Some places like California, they do both. And then you have 3,100 counties who all do it differently. And I will credit that to our team. That's certainly not me, Heather and her, the
So it's
management
built into the
teams.
software.
It's built into the software and all of the questions. So there are
Okay.
just a lot of stages that we take a file through where we're asking all of those questions. We're trying to ferret out, hey, okay, you inherited this. Tell me what that means. Did somebody die? Did you title transfer? Were there other people? Oh, okay. You said this was a bankruptcy. Great. What stage of the bankruptcy is it in? Can you put me in contact with your bankruptcy attorney? And, how are we going to get this removed from the bankruptcy? Or, can we get the court to approve it? Or, hey, this is a foreclosure. That's fantastic. Do they have a date set yet for your foreclosure? Great. Who's the trustee so that we can talk to them? Can we get permission to talk to your mortgage company? So it's just this waterfall series of questions and data that we're looking at, and that it's sort of like a choose your own adventure, right? At every point, we determine whether we go left or right. So that's built into the software and the SOPs.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
it sounds like you have put a lot of thought
Oh,
and
so much.
legal, like you put a lot of money probably into the legal side in terms of trying
Yeah.
to keep all of this straight across all
Hmm.
the different state lines, county
Hmm.
lines. So let's
Yeah.
switch gears for a second. Let's talk about your students.
Sure.
I think a lot of people are probably in their mind right now thinking, well, how can I take advantage of wholesaling
Yeah.
somewhere, like anywhere across the US? So
Yeah.
tell us, David, about a coaching moment or like a student success story that
Sure.
really stands out in your mind. Kind of, I really like when you had moved from Florida to
Hmm.
Tennessee because that, like, so many people can relate that situation. I'm sure you have many
Sure.
coaching students.
Probably the best success story we have. We had a client come in. They were operating out of the Northwest, and they were doing 97,000 a month, which is phenomenal, right? Like most people would kill to be consistently doing 97, and I think they went up to like 814,000 a month
Wow.
in like 4 months. And the takeaway there is once their team, because spread across their whole team, like all of those people were individually trying to quarterback their own deals and find title companies. Once that was taken off their plate, now their focus of their whole team was pushing towards new deals and getting those deals sold. And we were just in the background getting those deals closed. It really just spun the wheel of their company so much faster. And we just got, story after story after story of that kind of stuff.
So when folks work with you, then they get
Hmm.
access to your software to help them
Yeah.
organize all of their
Hmm.
deals
Yeah.
and all of the different legal compliance that's built into that. They then get
Yeah.
access to also a coordinator, a transaction
Hmm.
coordinator,
Yeah.
and help me understand it.
Sure. Yeah, so we have programs really for investors of all sizes. Initially, when we started, we really only worked with the larger companies, people that were doing at least two, three, four deals a month and were looking to grow. And over time, once we built that out and we were very firm in our processes and we knew everything worked, we started to expand that out and bring in clients who just wanted to do one deal at a time. So, yeah, I've got clients that are doing 30 deals a month. I've got clients that are doing one every 3 months. So, but they're all able to take advantage of that expertise of, an office full of people in office who've done 8,000 combined transactions. Like that's just not something you can hire, somebody off of Fiverr or some VA or a
Right.
failed realtor to come in and, give you that level of expertise and just background and knowledge. So, yeah, our clients get access to all of those things. Plus, we give them, all of the courses that we did create back in the day. We want to give them as many ways to succeed as possible, which is why we love to partner with Fund and Grow and offer that to them as well.
So, how do you see the closing services industry
Hmm.
evolving?
Yeah.
Because like companies like yours are really evolving the company, but
Hmm.
like or the industry, but over like the next 5 to 10 years,
Yeah.
where do you see easy REI closings
Sure.
like changing the
Mhm.
marketplace?
Yeah, I think, we become more of a household name, or at least, in investor circles. I think we have a very small portion of the market, even with as much business as we're doing now. For us, we expand out a little bit more and offer more services, a more complete ecosystem to our clients who come in who say, "Hey, I need to get some business credit. Great, I've got the guy for you. Hey, I'm looking for PPC. My marketing's not great. Great, we can provide that for you." But ultimately, we grow our business, we add in and bring in more coordinators. There's definitely a technology aspect there where we can add in, automations and eventually AI on the backside that can just help us do more, and just be even more efficient for our clients. I don't think AI will ever replace transaction coordinators because there's just so much hand holding that goes on when we're talking to these sellers. And honestly, we feel like a therapist a lot of times talking to some of these sellers. So yeah, there's that. And then eventually, we'll expand out and we'll do some work with, realtors. Right now we strictly work with investors, because that's such a complicated sort of squirrel's nest of a file. There are so many issues with it where retail transactions are going to be much simpler. But yeah, lots of growth for us. And, ultimately our goals, we would love to be involved in every single, real estate transaction that happens in the country. We've added in our own title company. That takes time to grow. You can't grow that nearly as fast as a transactions company because every single state you go into, you have to become licensed in that state. And They've all got different rules and regulations. So that's something that we're growing alongside. And the reason that we want to have a title company is so that instead of our coordinators having to go out and find, one of our 800 partner title companies across the country, we can start to handle those right in-house. So it's not sending a text or an email to Sally at XYZ title company. Now it's literally they walk down the hall, knock on the closing coordinators or title coordinator's door and go, "Hey, what's going on with Ari's deal?" "Oh, great, cool. Let me go handle that." So everything for us is just compressing time. How do we get our clients paid faster? Everything we do is geared towards that. That is our kind of North Star.
So, David, let's switch gears for a moment and find out
Sure.
more about this amazing brain that has created Easy REI Closings. That's
Yeah.
turned you guys into the largest transaction company in the nation, and that's
Hmm.
scaled so amazingly fast. So, I think
Yeah.
everyone that's watching this video wants to know from you, David, what is one book or habit
Oh,
or
yeah.
even tool like an app or something
Hmm.
that's
Yeah.
changed your business?
Yeah, without a doubt, Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. Absolutely amazing. Read it again about a year and a half ago. And, he really talks about this whole idea of scaling and making sure that you as the founder, as the CEO of your business, your focus is on one, the talents, the things that you're amazing at, right? The things that really lift you up and kind of jazz you up and make you want to jump out of bed. For most people, that's probably not bookkeeping, right? It's probably not
Yeah.
going over to your rental and doing paint. It's probably not gassing up the lawnmower, throwing it in the pickup truck and going over and doing landscaping at your rental properties, right? Those jobs you can farm out to somebody, for a far cheaper price. And then your talents are spent growing your business. So I think that relates to us as we're that person for a lot of our clients, right? We handle all of the back end kind of administrative work, which while important, cutting your grass at a property, very important, but probably not the thing I should be doing, right? It's not the thing that, gets me out of bed in the morning. It's not the thing that excites me. And I'm not probably not the best at it. Same with transactions, right? So that's how we relate, to our customers. But in my own business, right? How do I look at those things and go, "Hey, what can I do in my business to use the talents, the things that I'm good at, right? What can I be better at?" It's probably not, um, you know, being the person I like being a good coordinator. I'm not a great coordinator. My talents are better doing this. So who can I bring in to really firm up all of my weak spots?
Awesome, awesome. So
Yeah.
tell us, David, what is on the fun side,
Yeah.
one
Mhm.
deal that you'll never forget and
Mm,
why? It's got to be a
man.
fun one.
Well, yeah. I mean, gosh, I don't even know if I could talk about it here. We went into this hoarder house, and this guy it was a small little two-bedroom house, and like he was a legitimate hoarder. There was a pathway, maybe this wide, that sort of went through the house, and he had books. And I remember he had these old uh, Jim Dickel, George Dickel, whatever, whiskey bottles, like half gallon with candles in them because the power was out and he was using that to light the house. And anyways, I went into the bedroom and this guy was like a hoarder, stalker, crazy. Like when you started looking around, like all kinds of weird sex stuff in there and Polaroids of people. It was the ickiest thing ever. I'll never
Oh
forget.
my.
Just like we brought in labor ready people to kind of all clean it out. So that one I'll never forget that day. But then there's great days too where you're talking to a seller, and I remember this one lady. I met her in front of the house, and I thought we were going to go in to look at it, and she literally rolled down her window, handed me out the key, and I'm like, "Oh, Susie, whatever. Do you want to go in and show me around?" She's like, "Nope, my parents died in that house, and I'm not going in. If you could just go in by
Mm.
yourself and take care of it, that'd be great." I'm like, "Okay." So that's, we've talked about a lot of things, but that's really what we're here to do as investors. All right. We're here to help people. We're here to solve problems. And being able to do that so many times, really, really just makes you feel good, right? That person doesn't have to lose sleep over this property anymore.
So, David, for anyone who's listening in and interested in learning more
Yeah.
about working with you and our
Hmm.
Easy REI closings and your transaction coordinators and
Yeah.
using this amazing software that has
Hmm.
all the transparency and all of the different legal
Hmm.
processes built in. I mean, it just
Hmm.
sounds like such an amazing opportunity.
Thank you.
What's a great way for people to get started with that with you?
Yeah, book a call with our team. You can talk to me or my partner or somebody else on the team. We'll drop a little link down here below. But yeah, super important to just go book that call and let's jump on there and let's talk about what's going on in your business. Let's see what you've done for the last year. Where do you want to go in the next year? And let's talk about how taking all of that transaction and title and all that paperwork off of your plate, how you can take that time and now you can dedicate it to really growing your business. So, Ari, we'll drop a link here underneath. Definitely click that. This will be something special for Fund and Grow listeners and clients, and we want to make sure that you guys move right to the front of the line and we get you taken care of just as quick as possible.
Awesome, David. I really appreciate you taking the time
Yeah.
today to discuss this and to point all of our followers really in a good direction because I know that there's a lot of money to be made out there with wholesaling and
Yeah,
especially
so
when
much.
you're talking about making money using other people's money and not even breaking
Mhm.
the bank. This is just such an awesome system. So I'm just so thankful that you came on and spoke to everyone today.
Yeah, wholesaling's absolutely fantastic. You can definitely start this business with no money out of pocket. But what we've seen with so many of our clients is they use, someone to like Fund and Grow, and you guys are able to really to help them build up that credit, and they could take that and use that towards their marketing, and then that really just pours gasoline on it. And we've seen so many clients just really, over the course of a couple of months, really grow and expand. And we're so thankful for you guys for helping them out.
Awesome. Well, thank you, David.
All
Appreciate
right,
having you on.
you
And
bet.
I really want to encourage everyone to click the link and to register if you're interested in wholesaling. David is definitely your guy.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.